Buda, 29th of May, 1857. A 19-year-old mother sits at her daughter's bedside. The child is 2 years old. She had fever and diarrhea, and now she is growing weaker. In the evening, she dies in her mother's arms. The mother's name is Elisabeth. The world will later call her Sisi. Sophie is her first child, and the last one that ever truly belonged to her. Sisi today is a brand, the most beautiful woman of her age. Films, souvenirs, corsets in shop windows. A woman who could barely touch anything without it becoming myth. She gave birth to 4 children. 1 died at the age of 2. 3 grew up. None of them had an ordinary mother. This is not the story of a bad mother. It is the story of a woman who saved herself, and in doing so, learned how far away one can go. Sisi is married off in Vienna on April 24, 1854, at the age of 16. The groom, her cousin Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria. Later she will say, practically sold off as a child at 15. From the wedding onwards, the struggle for distance begins. At the Vienna court, her mother-in-law, Archduchess Sophie, rules. She considers the young empress immature. When the first child arrives on March 5, 1855, a daughter, Sophie, named after the grandmother, the mother-in-law takes the baby for herself. The nursery is in the mother-in-law's wing of the palace. Sisi sees her own child only briefly, at appointed times. In 1856, Gisela is born. She, too, goes straight to the nursery. Sisi goes to her husband in tears. But Franz Joseph sides with his mother. In May 1857, Sisi does something unprecedented at court. She takes both daughters with her on a journey to Hungary, against her mother-in-law's explicit advice. Both children fall ill, most likely with typhoid. Gisela recovers. Sophie does not. She dies on 29th May in Buda, in her mother's arms. Sisi is 19 years old. She returns to Vienna with her dead child. Archduchess Sophie blames her openly. 3 months later, Sisi is pregnant again. On August 21, 1858, Rudolph is born, the long-awaited heir. On the day after his birth, his father appoints him colonel-in-chief of a regiment. This child, too, is taken from his mother. But now something different happens. Sisi does not give in. She leaves. In the early 1860s, Sisi disappears from the Vienna court for almost 2 years. Madeira, Corfu, Venice. Officially, a lung condition. In truth, escape. Franz Joseph learns from the newspapers where his wife is staying. When she returns, she is someone else. Self-assured, slender, distant. She builds a second life for herself. One that belongs to her alone. 172 centimeters tall, under 50 kilos, a 46 centimeter. Waist. She weighs herself 3 times a day. She eats oranges, salted raw egg whites, violet ice cream from Demel. She rides for hours, walks for kilometers. In each of her residences, there is a gymnasium with dumbbells, rings, a wall bar. Doing her almost floor-length hair takes 2 to 3 hours every day. Washing it takes an entire day, every 3 weeks, with egg and cognac. When her hairdresser, Fanny Angerer, shows her a comb with fallen hairs, Sisi flies into a rage. Angerer begins secretly hiding the lost hairs on a strip of tape beneath her apron. From the age of 30, Sisi allows no more photographs of herself. From the age of 40, no more portraits. The world is to remember her young. While Sisi travels and beautifies herself, Rudolf grows up in Vienna. At 2, he wears a uniform. At 6, he is assigned a tutor, Major General Leopold Count Gondricourt. Gondricourt's methods border on sadism. He wakes the child with pistol shots. He has him drill for hours in rain and cold. He leaves him alone in the Leinzer Tiergarten at night, having first described the wild boars there in the darkest terms. Rudolf, always nervous, begins refusing food at the age of 6. Joseph Latour, one of Gondricourt's subordinates, sends a plea for help to Corfu. When Sisi returns in 1865, she finds a trembling, broken child. She says this kind of education would make Rudolf almost an idiot. She gives Franz Joseph an ultimatum: full authority over the children's upbringing, or she will leave the court forever. The emperor gives in. Gondricourt is dismissed. Latour takes over. Rudolf is given civilian tutors, and by the age of 9, he speaks 10 languages. Without an accent, Sisi has saved her son. And shortly afterwards, she leaves again. Gisela is the one who is overlooked. Shy, sober, much like her father. Sisi never finds her pretty. In a sarcastic diary verse, she compares her own daughter to a scrawny pig. At 15, Sisi starts looking for a husband for her. At 16, on April 20th, 1873, Gisela is married to Prince Leopold of Bavaria. Sisi herself had been a bride at 16 and regretted it for the rest of her life. And yet, at the wedding celebrations, Sisi looks so dazzling that she steals the spotlight from her own daughter. Later, when visiting her in Munich, she prefers to stay in a hotel rather than with Gisela. She does not find her grandchildren beautiful either. On April 22, 1868, Marie Valerie is born in Ofen, today's Budapest. She is Sisi's gift to Hungary, a fruit of the compromise. With this child, Sisi does everything differently. Archduchess Sophie is not allowed near the baby. Sisi raises her herself. But the pendulum swings into the other extreme. Marie Valerie is allowed to speak only Hungarian, and she hates the language. She is happiest when she can secretly speak German with her father. She is called the only one, Sisi's constant companion. She travels with her, sleeps in the next room, is confidant and consolation in one. At 16, Marie Valerie engages herself as a release from the smothering. Rudolf becomes the tragic figure of the court, highly intelligent, liberal, a stranger to his conservative father. In 1881, he marries the Belgian princess Stephanie for political reasons. The marriage is unhappy. He has affairs, debts, a morphine addiction. He once says, "Any privy councillor knows more about this state than I do. I am condemned to be a man without purpose." On January 30th, 1889, he is found dead at Meierling, beside the 17-year-old, Mary Wetzera. What happened there is its own story. What matters here is only what it does to Sisi. She is in Vienna when the news arrives. It is her lady-in-waiting Ida Ferenczi who delivers it. Sisi collapses. From that day on, she wears only black. She gives away her jewelry. She avoids Vienna. Christmas and her birthday, both on 24th December, she now spends far from her family. She travels restlessly. Corfu, Geneva, the Mediterranean. On the 10th of September, 1898, she is standing on a promenade by Lake Geneva. An Italian anarchist drives a file into her heart. She is 60 years old. Sisi had learned to escape from the world that kept handing her children away. But she never took them with her. Sophie died in her arms. Gisela grew up in a grandmother's arms. Rudolph grew up under pistol shots. Marie Valerie grew up in the arms of a mother who could never let go again. Sisi had set herself free, but for her children, there was no journey.